Niki, nobody needs to know we rehearsed this.
It's terrible.
Hello, friends. I'm here today with my very great friend. I love her so much, Niki Woodall. She is, actually, I'll let her tell you what she does nowadays. And it's pretty exciting. Hi, Niki. How are you?
Hi. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I love that couch.
Thanks.
Wow. Where's your coworker, Nelson, by the way?
Probably snoozing, taking a nap.
Somewhere. Hopefully he'll join us also in a few minutes.
Yes.
So how are you? How have you been during this crazy times?
I've been good doing a lot of, so I'm a recruiter at a big tech company. I work at Facebook by day, and then by night, I am a mindset coach. I specialize in career transformations for top performers here in New York. And I have been busy during COVID-19 because there's a lot of people out there in need right now. So doing a lot of, this is a new couch and, green couch series, a lot of videos, a lot of coaching to try to get some info out there for people that need it, that are affected by everything going on.
Yeah, they need help. Yeah, I've seen you have you are very active on LinkedIn with those little videos and sharing tips, and I'm sure it's very helpful for everyone out there. So what are you noticing in this very difficult times for people in terms of career?
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we've watched this escalate, right? We're all kind of going through these different emotional roller coasters, really, in our own ways. This is such a complex issue when it comes to the job piece, joblessness, unemployment. Every industry is obviously super affected, but then there's in April, the personal transitions that people have had to make with kids at home from school and the health side of it, people getting sick or knowing people that are sick, and just all these different overnight changes that it's the most complex thing we've ever faced, I think, in our generation, in just ever. It's not like a financial crisis where people, it's an economy issue and a financial issue, and then we see that trickle. This is impacting so many different facets of people's lives. So I think it's unlike anything else. What I'm seeing is, and what I'm pretty fascinated by is the roller coaster of emotions that can come with this, where it doesn't matter if you are somebody who does a lot of mindset work already, who is very much into personal development, or you're somebody who's never touched it. Everybody's affected, and everybody is having the good days, bad days kind of a thing, and the highs and lows. So I think from that perspective, it's been really interesting because we're all experiencing the same things. I think the scary thing, though, is if people don't realize that everyone's going through that together.
Yes.
And of course, we have all those slogans and things that says we're in this together. I hope that people really do realize that they're not abnormal if they're going through all the mindset ups and downs and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. It's like you said. I think you and I talk about this often. How, for both of us, I feel like we have done so much personal work, like inner work, right? So it's we have the tools, right, to go from the low points into the higher, better feeling points. And I also see this among my friends who maybe don't have access to those tools, or they don't know about them just yet, how it's so much more difficult to even like getting out of bed in the morning, right? And I was recording an episode with another friend who is specializing in fitness and nutrition for people. So her tip was just basically like when you wake up, don't set the bar for yourself too high. Just say, I'm breathing, and there's so many good things with me right now. I'm healthy, I have place to live, and all of those different things. So what tips actually do you give to your friends and family and people who come to you for advice for career coaching or mindset work, or, people even maybe whom you are interviewing? What tips do
Yeah,
you give them?
I think, and it's interesting you say that about just getting out of bed in the morning. I was just watching an interview with a guy who's a really big motivational speaker and kind of big brand and personality. And he was saying that even has his days where he has trouble getting out of bed.
Yeah.
And this is somebody who lives his passion, lives his purpose, helps a lot of people. Does it? So it is interesting, from getting out of bed, or another guy who's in the same thing, same boat of motivational type of work. He said he's catching himself playing video games. He hasn't played video games in over 10 years, and he's playing video games for hours and hours and hours at a time, and walking out of the room, and his wife's like, "You look like a zombie. Like you are drained. You don't look good at all after this." And he said he doesn't feel good after this. So I think the biggest, one of the tips for, it's something that we should be doing all the time anyway, but you have to prioritize leaning on the tools, like you said, but, and there are so many out there, from the meditation to the turning on YouTube and doing a quick 5-minute yoga, or, any kind of fitness stuff. But you have to really look at yourself to say, what do I enjoy? What brings me joy? And add that into your life, morning, noon, and night if you need to. Because otherwise it's very easy to let the day go by, and you might say, well, I enjoy Netflix. But do you enjoy hours and hours of Netflix? And how do you feel at the end of that? Like after a binge, or after, and then you just go to bed. So really looking to say, like, what do I enjoy? And making sure that you're fitting that stuff in, because that's going to help your energy. That's going to raise your vibration. That's going to, it's one of the tools. You have to just add in things that bring you joy.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I don't remember if you and I talked about this, but I definitely shared it with some of my friends. I mean, people by now know that I have been practicing transcendental meditation for over 10 years now. And what has been really helping me during these times, so you said, like, try to do it, breakfast, lunch, and dinner around those times. But with TM, we do it twice a day, morning and evening. But in this especially difficult times, and again, I also go like this, right, with emotions, with all kinds of different things. I started meditating much more often during the day. So whenever I feel this sort of influx of anxiety or something, like I read news or something, and there's like I feel like there's something heavy coming on, right? And so I just sit down and meditate.
I've been doing it too, like extra meditation sessions. It's definitely important. Or if you're into music, like some people aren't into meditation, but if they do like music, have a go-to playlist. Create that high vibe playlist that you can have, that's going to just, have a quick dance party with yourself or your kids or whoever. There's so many things, but you have to be conscious. I think the biggest thing is to not live through this time unconsciously, to really tune into this conscious awareness of what's going on with myself. And that's where all of the mindset work really starts.
Yeah, definitely listening to yourself, listening to your mind, trying to sort of get rid of the negative self-talk, right? And also tuning into your body. What do you need in that moment? Speaking of mindset work, can you share with us how and why did you get into this?
Sure. So mindset work, if anyone's unfamiliar with the term, it's really just working on yourself, working on your mind. I call it minding your mind because you have to, I think it's the cornerstone of everything. Strengthening your mindset and being able to have self-awareness and again, conscious awareness about what's going on with your thoughts. You're the only one talking to yourself all day long. And those thoughts are, we believe them to be true. All of these thoughts that we're rattling around in our heads all day. And that's the crazy part, is that most of the time we're looping the past. We're thinking about the future. We are, we're thinking things that just don't serve us in the present moment, and that don't don't help us. And then these thoughts move into our physical and become emotions that get stored in our bodies and it becomes anxiety and all these other things. So mindset work's just become wildly important to me over the last 10 years or so. And I got into coaching. I was doing, there's a piece of it that I will address today about with my mom, which really did inspire me to take this a bit further. But 5 years ago, I started doing work with different women's groups. And one of them was affiliated with helping sexual abuse survivors, and started coaching and just doing a lot of different things within that organization. And it really showed me how much of a tremendous need there is for people to there's the self-help books, which has helped me tremendously. That was my first intro to this world, was pouring into, the books and all of that in my 20s. And because those books the authors became my mentors, truly. And then then I invested in my own coaching and just started going deeper and deeper and deeper. I love psychology. I love thinking about how we think and how the brain works and how the conscious and subconscious mind. A lot of people don't realize that our subconscious is actually steering the ship.
Yes.
And we know that when you're like driving in a car and you're like pull into your driveway and you're like, how did I get here? Your subconscious mind knew how to drive the car and knew how to get you home because your mind was somewhere else. So we know how that stuff can show up, but I don't think we realize how it shows up in our day-to-day, in our limiting beliefs, in all of the stories that, again, we're looping, in our self-sabotage, in our just so many habits and patterns, which are so vital to become aware of and shine light on that, because it's going to affect your job search. It's going to affect what roles you feel worthy of and all those kinds of things. So the mindset stuff started then, and then it's just evolved, and it's important. It's just everybody, I think that there's, again, those phases. There's the self-help world that you can kind of lean on those authors and stuff and really start to coach yourself. And then sometimes you need to go a step further and invest in a coach that's going to be able to see some of your existing blind spots and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, and will be a champion, also an accountability partner.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you mentioned something. Do you want to talk about your mom and how that played a huge role for you?
So my mom was definitely a big part of my, again, wanting to take this further, because she passed away suddenly 2 years ago now. And her life, she had experienced a lot of trauma and sexual abuse and a lot of different physical abuse and things like that over her childhood and into her marriages. But on the surface, though, she was strong. She had her stuff together. She was functioning when I was a kid. She was, kind of moving along, bought a house, doing okay. And then I noticed her when I was a teenager, her life started unraveling. Things started coming to the surface. She started having all this trauma was resurfacing, and she became suicidal. She was in and out of work. She was depressed. She was on pills. She was just drinking a lot. She was doing a lot of self-medicating. And eventually we all were trying to help her, and she lost her job, always, trying to help her get new skills, get a new job, but she really lost her will. She lost her will to keep going. So watched this kind of spiral. And then I became very obsessed with just always trying new methods to help her and stuff like that, until finally she did die suddenly. At this point, she had lost her house. She had no job, no money, pretty much died on a stranger's floor. Wow. Basically a stranger where she was staying. And that was a big wake-up call to me, because when you look at the arc of her life, I was like, how does this happen to someone? How does this happen to a woman who was strong and had, things going well for her and has these kids and grandchildren to live for? Yeah. How does she give up in that way? So studying trauma has a way of, you can harbor this stuff for years and years and years, but if you don't address and get the tools and work with a professional, you never know how it could come back later. You never know what this could mean when you are a grandparent, if you're going to be able to show up and be that grandmother. And you know, into her 40s and 50s, it all came out. And this is why I'm really passionate about the coaching, because a lot of the women I work with, you talk to them and it's like, yeah, they're doing great. They're top performers. They're excelling in their careers, and they're ready to pivot and shift into new things and stuff, or start side businesses. But below the surface, there's still some things looming. We all have something.
Yeah.
You know, sexual abuse, it's like 1 in 4 women is sexually abused. That's reported. Stuff like that. I think that's definitely played a big impact on me, because it's not about now, it's about future you.
Yes.
Investing in coaching and doing the mindset work. Yes, people need jobs, and we want to help people get into better jobs and have more fulfilling day-to-day lives, but it's also for the future. And that's really become kind of a big part of my story too.
Yeah, I mean, sorry about your mom. Yes, she definitely had a very difficult time. And it's unfortunate that she didn't have someone. I think you even on your website mentioned this, you know, my mom didn't have a mindset coach or something like that. And it sort of brought the result that happened. Super unfortunate. But as you were speaking about this, those are obviously like very, very, you know, difficult and difficult times, and you know, the substance abuse and things like that, what you were mentioning about her. But I kept thinking about how there's so many people out there who maybe don't have those very sort of stark, you know, problems, let's call them, and yet they, you know, on the surface there's so much that they're struggling with, and like you said, they may go through like day to day and seem happy and all of those things. How do we help those, you know, how do we sort of remind them that you know, if you're not happy, like pretending that you're happy is not being happy, right? So are there people that you come across, you know, like that, and what do you say to them? How do you help them?
Yeah, I think these are the top performers usually, right? Like the people that are, and what I call top performers, it's those folks that are coming into the Facebooks and the Googles, and they're getting the jobs right away, or any industry. They're going after the jobs. They're doing well. They know how to sell themselves. They know how to, and ultimately they are there. You know, it's
Right.
just, again, it goes back to, we're all human, and we're all walking around in these, I call it flesh suits, kind of packaged, in a way that we're carrying, you know, 10, 20, 30 years of stuff and it's coming from this subconscious. So that's where we do a lot of journaling. We do a lot of, just a lot of honest reflection on where any of the things are coming from, because, and just digging deep below the surface there, because those kind of people, it may be the subtlest breakthrough that they need that can then take them over to the next level. Sometimes mindset work, you know, there is that idea, like I wouldn't want people that want to work with me for, you know, forever, because they're, you know, they're just so, you know, like have so much going on. The goal is to get people to a place where they can coach themselves.
Yes.
Really. And that's what a lot of the people that I do work with, it's like, you know, a couple of things that I'm seeing, or things that you maybe could, you know, start thinking about, and then you can get to a place where you can coach yourself to this level of happiness.
Yeah, that's actually the definition of a coach or a mentor, right? Your goal is not to hold on to that person, right, so that you can coach them. Your goal is to give them tools and show them the way, right, so that they can be they can go on their own.
But the happiness piece, though, like, I mean, happiness, it really is an inside job. So there's also like that, you have to take ownership, because no one is coming to save you. So that's a big thing. My style can be a little bit tough lovey in that way, because the reality is that, you know, only you can save you, and only you need to be ready for that, and to really do that inner work, because a coach can't do that work for you.
Nobody can. Nobody.
There
Not
are
your
people,
parents.
especially when it comes to career coaching. I mean, I think a lot of people think that, you know, you invest and then it's going to be this magic bullet thing. You still have to do the work. You still have to apply to the jobs. You still have to, you know, get the interviews. You have to do all the reaching out. So I think that, that's another thing to just kind of throw in there, is that, you know, working with a coach is great, but it's still on you. You still have to put that work in.
It reminds me of a very simple phrase that I probably thought of that before, but it stuck with me when I read it, or when I watched a documentary about Brian Tracy. I probably told you about this. Brian Tracy, it's as simple as, I am responsible. Whatever happens to me or for me or doesn't happen, I am the one who's responsible. I'm responsible maybe to think about like why it happened. I'm responsible to think about, you know, how can I change that? I'm responsible to think about where I want to be. And you and I talked about this the other day. Where do I want to be 1 year from now, right? Where do I want to be 5 years from now? Do I want to be in that miserable state while telling everybody I'm happy? So yes, I am responsible. That's the simplest, that's just the simplest way to think about it. Yeah.
I love that. There's another side of that coin too, that goes into some of the confidence coaching that I do with people, is, which is kind of cool with coaching, that it's something that I see as a trend as well, is that people need so little encouragement sometimes. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to be a part of that, because, you know, when you can tell someone and genuinely believe it, that, you know, they're amazing and they're incredible, and like, these are serious skills I'm seeing that they have, and that kind of stuff. People, it's not just about exposing some of the negative. It's like also just shining light on these people are phenomenal. And when one of my mantras is, when I bet on myself, I win. And I think that people forget how many times in their lives they have bet on themselves and succeeded. And what we tend to do is just focus on, you know, the bombing this interview, or you know, the layoff. I have a client right now who's just can't get over his last layoff, and now he's in the boat with COVID-19, where he just feels like he's just really in a place of kind of defeat with that, and the story repeating about like the failure. And it's like, what about all the other jobs you've had that didn't happen? What about it's really trying to go back to the wins too, to say, when I bet on myself, I win. And I think that like a lot of people just really need to, in this time with COVID-19, do that reflection and really look at their lives and say, when have I done things that I am proud of, and celebrate it, you know, really deeply celebrate that, because we got to start feeding ourselves this positive reinforcement, especially during this time. I mean, everything coming at us is so negative from the news and everything. So that's a big piece of it too, is being just reflecting and creating like these mantras, or these like reminders to yourself, like about how awesome you are, because most people are. So
that's super important. And obviously, as a Cliff and Strengths coach, that's also and a photographer actually, right? I also talk about this to people all the time, how we tend, I don't know why, I mean, it's part of the upbringing, I guess, societal something, that we tend to focus on the weak points all the time. You know, as a strengths coach, I hear people, but what, I can't do this thing, or I don't have that skill, or whatever. And I always have to remind them, but you have a talent for this, and you can do this, and this and that. For photography, right? It's like, oh, I have a pimple. Nobody sees that pimple. Everybody's looking at your beautiful eyes, or, you know. So that's super important to remember that. And but I do know that for some people, and this is why you said encouragement is so important, external encouragement. It's like you are it's not about giving permission to someone, but it's what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, you need that external validation sometimes, because for some people, I know it's hard to look inside for those good things among, within themselves. And sometimes what I actually love to do for myself when I have like I'm not feeling extra happy, or I'm sad about something, so I either go into my folder with like testimonials that people have said to me, or for people maybe who don't have businesses or who don't normally get testimonials, a good thing is maybe to reach out to their friends and family and say, hey, what am I great at? Like, tell me. And this is and then put it in some folder, and just when you are not feeling good, just go and read them. It will
Totally.
definitely brighten up your day, that's for sure. We spoke a little bit about, or we referenced career transformations. What are your thoughts about, because I remember in another interview that you just recently gave, you spoke about how, did you say 7 out of 10 people are not happy in their jobs? So what are your thoughts about reflecting on what do you want in life? Is it a good time now that we're in this pandemic? It's unfortunate, but it's the reality. Is it a good time now for people to think about this?
I see a lot of I mean, I'm an optimist by nature anyway, so as soon as this hit, my brain was already reframing a lot of the negative and the scary stuff going on into how is this positive, what's the glass half full situation here. And as a coach, 7 out of 10 people hating their jobs, something like 70% of people literally unhappy with where they work before this crisis. Now it's almost like a do-over. And yes, it's a little scary because businesses are obviously so affected, and the way hiring, it's changing a lot of that, but it's there's still, we only have this one life. Like we have this one life. And if 7 out of 10 people you see that are going to their jobs every day and doing these morning commutes are really would rather be somewhere else or doing something else, it's a pretty big blessing to be able to, as a society now, everybody say, hold up, like pump the brakes. What do I want to do? What wasn't working? What is working? I imagine this whole thing, after it, even a lot of people are going to say, maybe I don't want to work full time. Maybe I want to work part time and be home with my kids more. There's just so many different avenues or start an online business, or to, do the things you've always wanted to do. I think this is manifested in our society because I think we desperately need the slowdown. This is New York City. We are. I mean, things move fast, and it's like it's. I don't know many people that even spend one full weekend home.
Yes.
2 days in a weekend of just doing nothing or just being home and not going anywhere, let alone 2 months. So it's like using this time wisely for the mindset work is really critical. Instead of manifesting and trying to get the job, it's like, how about we manifest the breakthroughs in our mind, so that we can have so much more clarity and be ready to hit the ground running when this stuff opens back up. So
So what have you had conversations about career transformations recently with anyone during this time? What do people?
There's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of I love how many resources are out there now. All the coaches, there's just so much great stuff for I think it starts with clarity. I think the first thing is getting clear, and this is such an amazing time for networking because everyone's home.
And everyone is on LinkedIn.
And everyone's on LinkedIn, and everybody's available for Zoom, and it's just more normal. So I think but to go into transformation just as a concept first, I think there's a paradigm shift that has to happen within yourself in order to transform. This is something that I've been personally exploring with even myself and with my business and everything. to truly transform, there's this like idea that we all have a self-image, right? We have this view of who we are and this image that the world sees us as and all of that. But to transform anything on a deep level, we have to transform the image that we have of ourselves. So this is where the mindset work gets really deep, and like you start unpacking, it's like, who am I? Who am I? Who do I think I am? And who does the world see me as? Or what do I think the world sees me as? And all these kind of stories and reflections, because to transform, even if it's to go from like, a banking job into tech or whatever it is, you have to shed this image of yourself that says, I'm only in banking. And on a deep level, people want to resist that. People want to resist and hold on to the story of who they are, who they think they are, so fiercely. So this is where transformation starts. There's a paradigm shift to get, and if you're like have a business and you want to grow from making, go from, let's say 6 figures to 7 figures here to here, that self-image is going to come up because you've only ever been here or here. So how are you going to become the person who identifies and has this self-image of being a 7-figure earner? You got to do a lot of deep mindset work. You got to go bust through the blocks and the limiting things and all the stories that says other people make that kind of money, not me, and all that. And I think that the money piece when it comes to transformation is big too, because it relates to careers. A lot of people don't feel worthy of making, even $10,000 more in a better job. So that then we go into money mindset and stuff. So
that's so interesting, because I was just actually I was going to ask you, why do you think that is? Why do you think that the person would say, who, let's say, spent X number of years in banking, why do you think they think that they will not succeed in another industry? And also, yes, the money mindset. Why do you think people, like, what is it? Is it a fear of failure? Is it a fear of rejection? What is it in your opinion? What are you noticing?
It could fear creeps up at every corner. So fear is one of the biggest blocks for sure. Fear of failure. They say fear of success, fear of judgment. Fear of change. A lot of people are really afraid of change. And I think this crisis has shown us so much too about uncertainty and how and that's why a lot of people are struggling too, is because everything we thought was safe and certain is no longer certain. The reality is nothing's ever certain. Like any day there could be a war starting or just a natural disaster or some sort of thing. Like nothing's ever certain. So, but people it's leaving the comfort zone, leaving the safety of what we've known, which is and that's why this is such a big it's important to reframe this, instead of change is hard or change is scary, turn it into change is exciting. This is an opportunity. This isn't something happening to me. This is happening for me. This is a blessing. This is a gift right now to get this, even the possibility to transform. But to answer your question though, I think a lot of people are, there's so many factors. There's your network, what are judgment? What are people going to say if I make this move? And all roads lead to fear and ego at the end of the day. It's like fear, and then that ego, that self, again, the self-identity, and the holding on to, again, the rejection and all that kind of stuff too. It's all like ego-based. And I think that's a big piece of the pie, is to really look to say, like, whose opinions do I care about? And it could be, this is where it gets really good, because we start to look at our circles. Who in my life, I do deeply, deeply believe, and I talk about this a lot with my clients too, we are the sum, not just the sum, I say like the energetic sum of the 5 people we're spending the most time with. Their energy becomes our energy. We feed off of each other. We know that feeling when you're talking to a friend or a sister or your mom and they drain you. We know how, or versus uplift you. So it's a good time too to really explore your circles, Are you applying to jobs in a new industry and starting to have networking calls and informational chats with people and coffee chats and stuff where, and you start telling the people in your life and they're kind of quiet.
How they react. Yeah.
How do they react? Noticing these the silent pauses or the side eye or whatever, like start to see who's excited for you, who's clapping for you, who is your cheerleader. And
go to them.
go to them. And also like less time with the people that aren't going to be supportive, because that's going to mess up your energy for the day. That's going to mess up your actions. And I always say, like, the mindset work is big because and what you're feeding yourself, what you're listening to, who you're talking to, because it really can affect your actions after that call. You know, you get off the phone and it's like, do I feel like applying to these jobs now? This person just kind of brought me down. Or do I, am I going to just put the TV on?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
it's so interesting. It actually just reminded me, as we were talking about, you know, switching careers or, you know, the money question, right? It reminded me of a client. I don't remember if I told you that story. It reminded me of a client that I had last year who assumed that the role that he was in, which he was doing software engineering, would pay more than something else that he might want to do. And then when we looked at his profile, his talents, this client for strengths coaching, what we saw, the reasons he's so frustrated in his current role is because his talents show that he should be sort of more of a public speaker, let's say, right? So he has a lot of strategic talents, has a lot of influencing talents. You know, he has this ability to sort of command the room, you know, so to say, and he sees the big picture. He just sees it. And the frustration would come for him where, you know, he would want to share his ideas, but he wouldn't have the platform because he's a software engineer. So it's not his job, right, to sort of share his ideas. And it was so fascinating for me. And like you also said earlier, how, you know, I love seeing this when people have this aha moments. It's like, oh my God. And it was so fascinating for me to see this. But once we figured that out for him, like what is sort of stifling him, why is he unhappy? And we brainstormed a little bit, like what else he can do. And he decided to check into product management, which again, he thought that product management for some reason would be paying less. I don't know how he came to that conclusion, if he actually did some research or not, but it was interesting to see that. So I guess the question I am about to ask you is, what are your thoughts on like talent versus skills? And to also point out, you just said that you've always been positive, right? And you have this natural ability to reframe. And I looked at your top 5 and you have positivity as your number 3, which is like, it makes it's no surprise for me. And
Can you explain StrengthsFinder for anybody who maybe doesn't know about it? And I love what you do with that. So tell us what you do.
So StrengthsFinder, now it's called Clifton Strengths test. It's a talent personality test where it identifies your natural talents, and it puts them in a sequence of your unique talents, right? We don't call them strengths just yet because it's, as we talked earlier, it's on you to develop those talents, that combination, the unique combination of talents, into strengths, right? We at Gallup, we talk about, you know, you start with a talent, you finish with a strength. Within this methodology, they conducted, was back in late 80s, 1980s, they conducted interviews with I believe 2 million people who excel at what they do, and they define those buckets of talents, we call them, right? There are 34, and And it's virtually impossible to have another person with the same set of talents when you have them in your unique sequence. And I personally took the test 7 years ago, I believe, and it just blew my mind how accurately it described me. But it also left me wondering, what do I do now? And then I spent a few years figuring out what makes me me, you know. But what's fascinating about that is also we very often do not see, we take our talents for granted because it's so natural to us, right? It's like, for example, Niki, with your positivity, right? You are, and you also, I remember you mentioned that in your, in the recent interview that you did. You said you're all about silver linings, right? Not everybody is all about silver linings. In fact, I have some people in my communities who for whom the situation right now is so difficult, they actually get upset when people keep talking about silver linings. Which is it's so sad, right? But yes, the positivity is definitely a talent, right? But like, who thinks about, like, I have empathy as my top 5, right? I would never think that empathy is a talent until I sort of studied myself in this way. And I realized that empathy is actually what helps me even be a better photographer, right? Because I can read emotions so easily. And once I figured that out, it became my selling point. Because when you think about photography, can also be sort of a skill. Like, anyone with an iPhone or smartphone can learn to take a picture. You know, we all can take pictures. But so my sort of unique selling proposition became, with the empathy talent that I have, you know, I can tell you, and I can capture an image of you where you will look, you know, your authentic self. When I photograph events, for example, you know, people tell me that I am very good at capturing emotion because I see it. It's just it's a no brainer for me. I anticipate those emotions. So that's the Clifton strengths. And since ever since I took it, and I've read a bunch of books about, you know, how it was developed and how it works and all those different things, I became so I would not stop talking about this to people. And then so I just got certified in it. So,
and I definitely want to do that, your top 10 and do the analysis with you, because as you're talking, I know you've said to me before, I have my top 5, but you said ideation is probably in my top 10.
Yeah, somewhere, yeah.
And as you're talking, I'm like literally getting all these new ideas for your business. I'm writing them down because it's just like, it's a talent, but like it's up to you to turn it into a strength. How are you going to use it? So I love the way that helps frame it. But and then there's and then we've talked about the idea of passion. Like, where does passion fit in? And for me, I do think it's pretty known nowadays in the corporate world that most people do strengths. You want to play to your strengths now. It's kind of like this push for that within your job, because when your strengths are going to give you energy, your strengths are going
definitely.
to, when you're versus doing something you don't like. Like for me, if I'm on Excel for more than 10 minutes, I'm ready to, you know, like just, you know, if I'm on on the phone with a candidate and talking about their life and their things, like it's a strength is going to bring me energy versus drain me. Then it's the same thing with passion. You know, I think when you're in alignment and doing work that is connected to whatever your passion is, you're going to have energy. You're going to get fuel from that. So it all kind of meshes together in that way. But this is where people have this opportunity to really like look at their lives and say, like, what do I enjoy? What do I enjoy? And as a coach, one of the things, as you know, I do energy healing as well. I became a certified energy healer this year.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Which is a whole nother like ball game. And as you said, I think it adds something unique to what I do with my coaching, because it's so much of what I say, it's 80-20. It's like with getting a job and having these transformations, it's mindset work and energy work is the 80%. And then the 20% is actually applying and sitting down and doing it. So it's really meshing these things together. When you're in an energetic alignment, with where passion meets the good energy and the good vibes, then the strategy of like, actually, how do I find this job? It becomes effortless. And it doesn't feel like work because you're excited about it. If you're applying to 100 jobs that you're not excited about any of them, but they're just going to be jobs that can pay the bills, that's not going to be fun. You're not going to be in a good energetic vibe. And guess what? Those vibes come through to the recruiter and to the, like, we're trained to feel through the resume. And it's wild. And I don't know if it's just me because of my feeling of energy too. And kind of that, the energy side of it, but you feel something when this resume hits your desk. Like, you can really feel, is this person excited about what they're doing or not? It's wild. And you especially can feel it when you get them on the phone or see them in through the interview process and stuff. So it's really trying to bridge all those gaps together. Mindset work, energy work meets strategy for what I do. Yeah.
And definitely, you just mentioned reading resume, right? You can already feel and see. But also, I mean, I have obviously been on, I have interviewed for a job, and I also interviewed other people, for whatever job we were hiring for at whatever company I worked. And yes, it's like, it's so, you can see it when a person just wants like a job, right? You can see it, because it's there's something like, I mean, for me, it would feel something is off. And I certainly know this when, let's say, maybe when I was at a time in my life when I maybe was a little desperate to get just a job, right? And it's difficult to interview, right? Because you're not in your authentic anything, right? You are just like saying the words that you're supposed to be saying, but the other person, even if they don't have empathy, like I do, for example, 80% of our communication is the nonverbal. They may not know what you're feeling or whatever is going through your head, because nobody obviously is a mind reader, but they will know that something is off by the signals that sending out. So yeah, so definitely it's important to at least like something about the job you're applying for, right? And make it important to you. Yeah.
It's always, people get a little overwhelmed by this whole thing, but we think like, if there's hundreds of people going after one job, I always say, like, don't think about the hundreds. It's always 50-50. It's going to be an offer or not. It's yes or no. So you have to control what you can control, which is how you show up, how you prepare, how your energy is, what kind of, even if you aren't super passionate about whatever it is you're interviewing for, how do you tap in and get excited and still get passionate about something with the job? Because there are a lot of people that are going to need jobs to pay the bills, and I get that. So I don't want to just say, follow your passion now and that's it, because that's a little like frou-frou-y too. But the reality is, there's going to be something about any job that you can tune into gratitude for, and even bring a grateful energy versus a passionate, I want to be the best executive assistant in Manhattan type of a thing, or just I would be so deeply grateful for this job and this paycheck. How can you bring an energy of gratitude to the interview? Because that will speak volumes as well. If the passion piece may not be there, there's still energy, ways to tap into positive energy, that I think this is something that I coach with as well. You have to figure it out. You have to figure out how to bring the good vibes. Because only you are responsible for how you show up.
Yeah. It just reminded me, I recently watched a webinar with former Chief Human Resources Officer at Google, Laszlo, I forget his name, or I just want to mess it up pronouncing it.
Yeah, he has that book, I think, a book about.
Yeah, so he now runs his own startup, but I remember how he was talking about a similar thing where how to get passionate about the job you're doing or maybe you're applying for. And the example that he gave, which was so fascinating to me, was about, let's say you're working, you know how at Google they have these different teams, and you know, you work on Google Maps or Google Translate and all of those different things. And so he was saying, imagine you're working on the team that, you know, make Google Maps work amazingly well. And you may get into this sort of boredom because it's technical, it's all of those different things. But then if you attach a story to that, like why, like what are the different user cases when Google Maps are especially valuable to people. And the story that he told was how there was an orphan or somebody was abandoned, or there was something around that, and that person, that kid, found their family somehow through Google Maps. So his
Wow.
advice to a person who works on Google Maps and feels drained by it somehow because it's too technical or something else, remember that story. You know, remember that there are people who are using that product in the way that may change their life, for example, right?
Yeah,
Or it may
tuning
get,
into the
yeah,
mission of,
yeah, yeah.
that's
So
it.
that was awesome. And another thing about interviewing, and you mentioned, you know, don't think about like 100 people who are applying for the same job. That's exactly right, because it's like if you stay in that state of mind, sure, you will feel this enormous weight of the competition, but what are you as an individual bring to the table? And it's again like it's reframing that into that way where how can you help that company, like what are their, you know, problems they're solving, like how can you, what do you bring? And remember how our mutual mentor says, you know, once you are best at what you do, or like at least striving to be the best at what you do, competition becomes irrelevant. And I feel that this is one of the best ways also to look at anything really, right? Whether it's a job search or, you know, business development or anything like that. And then also within you know, this work that I do with Clifton Strengths, we also talk about, you know, would you rather be sort of well-rounded or extraordinary, right? So look for ways where it's like, do you need to know all of the skills, or do you want to be super amazingly great at whatever, you know, whatever you're doing? So yeah,
I
those are
like that. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that that's something else that's actually super interesting for in this whole space is when you think about the top performer mindset. Sorry, hold on just a sec. When you think about the top performer mindset, people think that it's not, it's a skill and it's a strength that in its own is cultivating this to become a top performer. You know, it's just like with anything. Like if you're and I say this from experience because when I started doing a lot of mindset work, I started noticing within myself how going back even as early as high school and growing up, I had this way of always being very naturally good at school, naturally good at certain things, and you know, cheerleading and this and that. So I was always a bit better than the average kid at certain things, but I never really strived to be like the best tumbler on the cheerleading squad or the best. I settled for what I call like a step above average. Like I was between average and not exactly top performer. Because this was my comfort zone. I didn't want to outshine. I didn't want to, it all came so easily. So I didn't want to like, you know, even put in the extra work. and stuff. I had all these friends. I noticed when I got into all the colleges I applied to, I had some friends that were going to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, and all these great schools. And that wasn't even in my wheelhouse to think, should I strive for that? And that's when I noticed you've kind of settled for this second-rate spot where if you pushed yourself and applied yourself even more, you could be going to those places too. So then, and I did the same kind of habits and routines into college and into, in my earlier jobs or just out of school and stuff. It wasn't until moving to New York that I said, enough of that. It's time to become a top performer. It's time to get the job at Facebook if I want the job at Facebook. Mm-hmm. It's time to, because it's all figure outable, as Marie Forleo says, so that was definitely a big reframe and a big like aha for me, was like, you're like, this is all learnable stuff. Like, it's not other people get those jobs, not me. It's like, it's a decision. And I always talk about the whole decision piece too. The decision is the hardest part with change and transformation. And, the people that are often, let's say, people that are give up drinking and smoking and stuff like that. They say that the decision is the hardest part in really any life change. When you act, and I'm not talking about like a regular, just I'm deciding that I'm going to go to do keto starting tomorrow and I'm going to, lose 30 pounds this month. Careful thought and consideration. My mindset coach taught me this. Giving something careful, dedicated thought and consideration, and then truly becoming and embodying the decision is that's how you transform. It's deciding to become that top performer. It's deciding to stop playing small. It's deciding to stop being average, and then looking at your life to say, how has this shown up for me? How have I been playing small and average? A lot of people will they want the jobs at Facebook though, but they're not willing to do the work and to actually say, wait a minute, do I show up as a top performer, or am I like applying and then crossing my fingers or praying that this will work out? A top performer, like our mentor says, is they're going to get every job that they go for because they've tested, they know their resume is outstanding, they've worked with a coach, they've practiced interviewing even when they were not interviewing for the jobs. They've put in hours and hours and hours of behind the scenes work that average people just aren't doing. So this is where my tough love will come in with coaching, because it's like, you want that job, but like, how are you showing up as the top performer? And it's figure outable. We all have the opportunity to do that and to decide to do that. It's just that not everybody's going to put that work in.
I love all of this. But I also, like, now that you were just mentioning Ivy League schools and Facebook as this huge brand, I want to flip it. Sometimes it's important to ask why. Why? Right? Why do you want to be studying at the Ivy League school, or why do you want to work for Facebook? Is it just the matter of prestige, or is it like maybe your parents are telling you, maybe it's something you grew up believing that you have to do? Which reminds me, Michael Ellsberg's book, Education of Millionaires, right? He basically, not that he went to Brown, I think, but he talks about, you don't actually, like, to be successful in life, you don't have to have to go to university. And he gives, basically the book is a collection of stories of people, real life people who have succeeded. Either they're college dropouts or they didn't go to college at all, Steve Jobs, Sir Richard Branson, all of those different people. And also that just reminded me, just yesterday, I got this was released. It's my favorite. This is my favorite artist, Tori Amos. I have been listening to her for so many years, and she helped me so much. And so before the book came out, there was an article in the New Yorker where she talks about, and she talks about this in the book, which I can't wait to read, but she talks about how she became a failure at age 11. 11 years old, a child thinks and feels that she's a failure. And the reason for that was, so she was born sort of like this child prodigy, where I think she started playing piano when she was 2.5 years old, right? And then so at the age 7 or something like that, she went into the conservatory, which was, from what I understand, I mean, I'm not from here, so I can't really tell, you know, what's more prestigious or less prestigious, but so she was in the conservatory. But I think what happened is that she does have the talent for playing piano, and she actually writes music playing piano. But from what I understood from that article, and like I said, I can't wait to read this in the book because I think she expands on that, is that she could not read sheet music, which is a skill, right? When you think about talent versus skill, you know, you can be musically talented,
Right.
but you know, reading music is, I guess, different. So anyway, so yeah, so she was kicked out from the conservatory at age 11. And in
Wow.
that article, she talks about the quote, I wrote it down here: "It broke my father's heart that I wasn't going to be a concert pianist." So the reason I said I wanted to flip it over, it's like, whose dreams are you following, right?
Right.
Why do you want to be at whatever, you know?
Well, that's a great, I love the why. It does start with why. And it really, you know, like Simon Sinek and all that type of stuff. It really is so important for the mindset piece, because, and it also the energy piece that I get into, because if the why is rooted in ego, or just a place that's not pure or in alignment with your desires, your passions, you're wanting to serve others or serve a company, help a company thrive and grow, or just even if it's for the prestige and stuff. And I'm not knocking it, because trust me,
No,
I
me
get
neither.
it.
No.
Yeah, like I'll never forget when and it's funny that the book is called Resistance. I want to check that out. I talk a lot about how I manifested the job at Facebook, and I believe it was energy work plus actual preparation and the universe bringing it to me. And I don't share this too often publicly. It's usually in one-on-one conversations, and I tell my clients all the time. I'll never forget my final round with this company, with Facebook. I was, you know, like as you go through the process, you tend to get more and more excited. You're getting closer. And I remember, and I did a video recently about the melancholy, the existential bummer after a good interview. You leave an interview and it's gone great, and then you get so sad, because then it's like, it's really revealing to you the dip is revealing to you that you actually want the job. If you don't want the job, you don't care. You walk out of there and you're fine, you know? But when you do really want that job, now you feel kind of sad, because you can already feel its impermanence of this not working out. And, you know, this has all been, you know, kind of for nothing. So I'll never forget when I left my 4th round at Facebook or whatever, I felt the dip, and I felt, I got home, and then I was, a couple hours later, I was feeling a lot of sadness. And then I started to go into my why. I was like, why do I feel sad? Because I want the job. But then I was like, why do I want the job? And why do I want this now? And a lot started coming up for me, where I started feeling like, you know, I wanted to really just leave the agency, the firm I was at. I was ready to get out of there. And I wanted to, I had this timeline in my head of like, if I leave, if I get this offer, I can, you know, take, you know, these 2 weeks and go to this event in Miami that I had some friends going to. And I had this whole vision of like all the things I wanted around why I was like so excited for this to work out now and start the job in November and have this whole thing planned out in my head already. Then why again, and keep going and keep peeling back the whys. And they say that the truth lies after the 3rd why. You know, you might say like, I want it because it's going to be more money, or I want it because the truth is somewhere deeper than that. So they say, ask why, then ask why, then ask why again. And then when I got to the 3rd why, it was all ego. It was all ego to be able to like leave that job for Facebook and for the big brand. And also the ego of like proving to myself that I could get the job and those kind of things. And when I sat with that, I kid you not, I sat with that feeling of ego. And what I believe is that when you have these hidden blocks, these hidden like low vibrational energies and things, it's creating resistance between you and the thing you actually desire. And this is where manifestation and the law of attraction comes in. You're literally putting a big block there. And I also started idolizing the job at that point. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing if this works out. And I put it up here on this pedestal, and I'm down here, and you're putting all this resistance between you and the thing now, instead of saying, like, first of all, instead of just trusting, if this works out, this is, it's going to work out how it's supposed to. God, universe, higher power, spirit, whatever you believe in, has my back, and it's going to work out how it's supposed to. So that's the trust is a much better energy than this like resistance you're putting on by idolizing the thing. So I sat with it. I just started unpacking all of this in my head over the course of like 10 minutes. And I realized it was rooted in ego. And I really wanted to prove to all these people and to myself that I could get this. And I released it. I just sat there and I was like, I'm releasing the outcome. I'm releasing the outcome. I'm releasing the outcome. Not like, releasing this egoic need for this to work out. And would you know, 5 minutes later, I got a text message from the recruiter that said that they had good news for me. Wow. 5 minutes after that. And I swear, this is when I really became, I was already a believer of like energy and manifestation and all of the vibes that we put out there that we don't even realize we were putting out there, because, you know, we're of this world, and we see with two eyes, and we think that everything is what it seems, but there's a whole energy world that's like very, very powerful. And that's when I realized, like, this is not a coincidence. This was literally like doing that mindset work and releasing that energetic block that was putting the resistance between me and her texting me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
well done.
Thanks. So that's a tip though for people. It's like, ask why, and then again, and then again. And the truth is somewhere deep in that third why, and why you want the job, or why you want whatever it is you want.
Yeah. And it's amazing. And obviously when I was mentioning this, like, if you want to go to Ivy League school, sure, go for it. It's just, it's interesting how I also have a few, acquaintances or friends in my circles who did go to those schools or work for whatever companies, with big names, but it's like what we talked about in the beginning, they're happy on the outside, but there's something missing deep down, and they're afraid to admit it, because when you look, like, but I went to the school and I went to this and that, but there's something missing. So, and it's interesting how for, people like that, it's very difficult to admit that, right? It's super hard.
That's where the vulnerability is a big piece of all the mindset work too. You're getting vulnerable with yourself, and then you have to go, and I'm actually doing a video about this soon. It's the many layers of vulnerability needed in a job search, because a lot of people don't even tell enough people in their network they're in a search. Like that was before the crisis, and now you have to be vulnerable to put yourself out there and tell everyone that that you were affected by this, without shame, without guilt, without any,
because there's nothing to be ashamed of, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's
especially
there to be
now, it's like, it's something that everybody understands, but even in a normal circumstance, if someone gets laid off or they just feel kind of crappy about it,
no, I definitely know what it feels like. I'm saying it like as a sort of reflection, right? It's like, also sit down and think about it. So why shame? Why do you have that feeling of shame? What is a shame about?
Failing. People feel shame about if you're the failure, what it means to the network. People compare a lot to each other. It's embarrassment and stuff like that. So the stages of vulnerability, you got to get vulnerable with yourself first of all to be able to do this inner work. I mean, mindset work, it's going to get crappy before it gets better. Anybody who's ever been to therapy, it's kind of like therapy, but in therapy you're going into a therapy session for an hour, let's say in a week, and then you're back into your life. This is going to be like, at least working with a coach, it's like, and really diving in to the point where I hope people will really do a lot of inner work right now, because we have the time and space for this. You got to get vulnerable with yourself first though. I mean, that's really like the biggest piece, is a willingness to to be honest with yourself. A lot of people are not honest with
Yeah.
themselves, like you just said, to be able to admit, hey, I regret going, just checking the boxes and doing all these things, or I regret staying at this company too long. Another way that this is a big blessing is a lot of people overstay. I have a video that I'm making, know when to leave a party, because it's just like with relationships. I mean, we waste a lot of time, and we spend a lot of time when our intuition is screaming at us, it's time to leave this job, it's time to change teams, it's time to leave this relationship and do these different things. We overstay our welcome in a lot of places, and then we look back on our lives and we wonder, like, why haven't I grown, or why haven't I made more money, or my salary's capped at this, and all these things. And it's like, usually it has to do with you staying a little too long at each party. So this is an opportunity for a lot of people that were already in job searches, and wanted to leave their jobs and stuff. The universe is giving you the boot to say, yeah, it's time to leave the party, change the scene,
Okay. All right. Wow. We've been talking for, what is it, over an hour now.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel like we could go on and on and on. So maybe we should do a follow-up chit chat and pick one of those subtopics we just stumbled on. But yeah, that was so much fun. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I'll close with just this one idea that I've been mulling over this week. Is I'm kind of fascinated with like Buddhism and the idea of like monks and how they have this like the monk mindset, and how I read an article with this lady who was a former monk and now she's a writer. I think she just wrote a book, I think, in New York Times and all that. She talks about that the training to be a monk it's not so that you live this like Zen life all the time. It's your training to be in the pressure cooker, like how you respond to things when you're in this pressure cooker. And I was like, that's fascinating, because we have this tendency, and I think a lot of people are shocked right now at the way they're feeling and everything that's going on, because it's easy to be happy when life is good, It's easy to be peaceful, it's easy to be in a good state, but we're truly tested when circumstances get a little dicey, when you're dealing with death, or when you're dealing with, that was another thing with my mom's death, when I realized I was at Facebook working about a week or two after she died, and I was like going through the motions in New York, where I was just, you kind of feel like you're in a video game or in a fog when you're grieving. And I was just seeing all these humans, and I'm just kind of like going through life, but like in this fog. And I remember this thinking though, like if I could tune into feeling peace during this time, and I could master this monk mindset, like, can you be a monk in Midtown when things feel crazy and noisy and people everywhere and you're dealing with grieving and all this other stuff? If you can take control of your emotions and find peace and serenity during the tough times, you've won. So I think that's kind of that took a lot of years of mindset work to get to that point of realization. But then also to say, wow, this is a challenging time, but thank you for this challenging time, because I get to see what I'm made of now. And I think a lot of people, anyone watching who's affected, try to really dig into the gratitude to say, to be thankful for the areas of your life that are being exposed that may need some change, because I think that's the other thing. It's kind of like how social media, people blame social media for like everything wrong with life and, comparing and all this and that. Social media is just revealing what's going on under the surface of people's minds, comparison, jealousy, etc. It's just exposing whatever's already there. Same with this crisis. This crisis is exposing what you're dealing with in your life, not liking the job, maybe issues with your marriage. Now you're home with your husband and now you guys are fighting all the time, because that's not because of the crisis. It was there before. So be grateful for what's getting exposed, basically, because when you're grateful for it and you're aware of it, you have the opportunity to change it. So that's the blessing.
It's to borrow from one of the people that I follow. Oh my God, you introduced me to him, Tom Knowles. Remember the Vedic meditator?
Yes.
I came to photograph him at Facebook. He was recently talking about the relationships within, COVID, and one of the students, I guess, asked, or said rather, that her partner is sort of starting to show his true colors now that they're in this confined space together.
Mm.
So basically what Tom was talking about, he said, all of the information that you're getting, whether it's negative or positive, it's like what you were saying, right? It's all good information. It's all good
Mm-hmm.
information. You just need to take it, look at it, examine it, learn from it, and figure out ways how to improve that for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. I love that. Yeah, we could go on and on.
Yes.
And so for you though, you're available for the strengths coaching and for help to help people find their strengths. And I definitely would love my network to reach out to you and know that about you, because I think it's such a cool, unique thing. And it's a gift to be able to give that to people, to give them that awareness of like, it goes beyond just taking the quiz and saying like, oh, these are my top 5, like to really dig into the 10 things and to understand how that can help with
everything.
So I'd love to partner, if you have some
Yeah.
sort of like thing you can do for my clients or my network too, we should talk about that.
Yeah, let's take it offline and talk about it. Thank you so much for the thought.
Thank you.
I would really love that. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed our conversation as much as we did. Please, there's a button somewhere below this video for you to subscribe, because I will definitely be bringing more guests like Niki on, and we will go deep, and it's going to be fun, and you will hopefully learn something from this wonderful conversations. Thank you so much. Stay safe. I love you. Bye-bye.